Hi everyone, good afternoon, Happy New Year, and welcome to this first talk of the year. Thank you for joining us today on our online talk entitled Foreign Companies in Malaysia, Branch Office Representative or Local Subsidiary. Before we begin our talk, let me share a short video for you all to watch.
I founded the firm in September 1985 with the vision of seeking truth and justice for our clients and not just winning their cases. Over the years, the team has achieved many significant milestones. We are today recognized by the Legal 500, Asia Law Profiles, and Asian Legal Business as a recommended firm in various practice areas. While we have embraced technology to make our services efficient and responsive, we continue to grow on the bedrock of meticulous preparation and hard work, for which there is really no substitute. As legal practice becomes increasingly international, we keep ourselves ahead of the curve with our relationships with lawyers from around the world. Our firm is a founding member of the League of Lawyers, a growing international network of law firms in 20 Asian and European countries.
We believe in partnering with our clients to protect and grow their business. We achieve this by holding firm to our values of integrity and justice, while giving our best to deliver effective and efficient solutions. Instead of just legal services, we focus on developing great working relationships based on understanding and respect.
We regularly advise foreign clients, including many Chinese investors, and have a ready appreciation for different ways of doing business. In corporate matters, we offer relevant and commercial solutions, often raising issues that clients may or may not have realized before. In negotiations, we believe in facilitating win-win outcomes.
Hope you enjoyed that video. Welcome to anyone who just recently joined us. My name is Jasmine Wong and I'm a paralegal at Ma Wing Kwai & Associates, and I will be moderating today's session. Before we start today's talk, let me introduce the firm and what we do. Ma Wing Kwai & Associates is a mid-sized law firm that was founded in 1985 by Datuk Ma Wing Kwai. Our able team today comprises of 29 lawyers and support team of 30. Datuk Ma is today a consultant with the firm following his retirement from the Court of Appeal bench in 2015. The firm continues its tradition today of working primarily with small, medium enterprises, family businesses, and individuals. We are a full-service law firm with a corporate department, a dispute resolution department, and a dedicated employment industrial relations team, and a department focused on servicing the needs of individuals and families. Our practice groups indicate some of our focus areas, which are supported by talents from both our corporate and dispute resolution teams. Today's talk is part of our NWPE online talk series. By way of background, we have been organizing monthly talks at lunch talks at our office since 2013, some of which were also broadcasted live. But unfortunately, because of COVID-19 MCO, we moved online in order to continue with our objective of sharing knowledge, raising awareness, and encouraging networking for clients, potential clients, and in-house counsels. Before I continue, please be reminded that this talk does not constitute legal advice. In the event you require specific legal advice on your matter, please contact us for complimentary legal consultations. Details will be given at the end of the talk. Our first speaker is Anis Sohaini. She is an associate in the Corporate Advisory Department. She was admitted to the Malaysian Bar in 2018, and her areas of practice include corporate advisory on commercial agreements, regulatory compliance, and mergers and acquisitions. Our second speaker, Mira Marshall, is also an associate in the Corporate Department. She was admitted to the High Court of Malaya in 2022, and her areas of practice include corporate and commercial advisories on matters such as merger and acquisition, regulatory compliance, and drafting corporate agreements. Please take note that we will also be having a Q&A session at the end of the talk, so please feel free to post them in the Q&A chat box at the bottom of the screen, and we will attend to it at the end of the talk. I will now hand over the floor to our first speaker, Anis, to start on today's talk. Anis, with you.
Thank you, Jaslyn, for the introduction. Hello and Good afternoon, everyone. Like she mentioned, it's the first talk of the year. So if any of you by chance happen to have a resolution to attend more of these talks, hopefully you'll learn something today and it will make you want to join more of these talks. I will be covering the first two talk points, Foreign Company and the Companies Act and registering a branch office. And Mira will take over on establishing a representative office or incorporating a local subsidiary. Before we go into what a foreign business company is, I thought it was worth noting the different types of companies available, which you may have heard of. As you can imagine, each entity or company is governed by a different set of laws, and they will have different structures and requirements. But I wanted to zone in that our focus today will be foreign companies. And whether you're a foreign business owner or someone who deals with foreign companies on a daily basis, this will have effect on what you want to take note today. But most of these companies have an element where they require some sort of local shareholding or directorship by a national. So you would find that foreign companies may be restricted on the types of entities that they can register, incorporate, or establish in Malaysia. So this will be the focus of our talk for today. So what is foreign company and what is it under the Companies Act, Malaysian's company? So a company is a company incorporated under the Malaysian Companies Act. So by contrast, a foreign company is basically any company that was incorporated outside of Malaysia. But the Companies Act has specifically defined it as a company, corporation, society, association, or other body incorporated outside of Malaysia, or an unincorporated society or body which does not have its principal business in Malaysia. The provisions for foreign companies and the Companies Act can be found under Part 5 of the Companies Act on foreign companies, and it's quite straightforward. So these are the main provisions that a foreign company have to abide by. So it's Section 56 on prohibition of carrying on business in Malaysia. So the emphasis here is that a foreign company shall not carry on business in Malaysia unless it's registered. So we'll take you through when we go through each type of entity. And so Section 562, registration. It emphasizes on registration again, and the requirement for foreign companies to have an agent or a registered business. So these are the options available to foreign companies. It will be either registering a branch office, seeking approval to establish a representative or regional office, or incorporating a local subsidiary. So I'll take you through the first one, which is branch office, and Mira will cover the other two. But I thought it would be helpful for you to see the main differences. So depending on whether you're a foreign business owner or you're someone who deals with foreign companies on a daily basis, you would take note the differences here to decide which option you want to take. So for a foreign business owner, they may want to take into consideration the mode of establishment, whether it's registration or incorporation, because there's lots of implications such as cost, tax, and all that. So you would want to think about the cost of moving or expanding your business to Malaysia, and also the governing body, whether it's Companies Commission of Malaysia or any other governmental department. And again, you would want to know who you would have to deal with if you need assistance in dealing with all of those. Whereas those of you who are joining, who are probably someone who deals with foreign companies, you may want to take note on the status of the company, whether it's a separate legal entity from the foreign company or it stands on its own, because you would want to know the implications of any issues arising, whether you would sue the foreign company or you would sue the local entity. And you would also want to know the type of businesses that these foreign companies can conduct, because you want to make sure that you're not agreeing to enter into any deal that would be contravening whatever requirements that they are supposed to follow, or the type of businesses that they're actually allowed to carry on in Malaysia. So I've listed out the factors I mentioned. So there's registration and separate liabilities. There's also considerations on whether they have the relevant connections in Malaysia. So we do get a lot of clients where they want to come into Malaysia and they're not aware of some industries. They require a local director or local shareholder as a requirement. And so this is something you should be aware of. There's credibility in business standing and scaling possibilities, generally factors to consider if you're leaning towards incorporating a local subsidiary, because most Malaysian companies, generally they would feel more familiar, more comfortable dealing with another local company, because the local company would have more stringent compliance requirements. So they would understand that a fellow local subsidiary would have complied with all these requirements. And scaling possibilities is usually for the local subsidiaries, for example, if they want to use the company to generate income as a funding possibilities to invite investors to the company. So the first option is registering a branch office. To understand what a branch office, I guess you can just imagine any company, any big company, they may have many branches in one country. So this one would just be a branch which is outside of that original country. And Section 53 of the Companies Act just provides that keeping the registration of the branch office is the same rules apply to the foreign company as it's any branch office in Malaysia. And again, it's emphasized that any foreign parent company is required to register itself as a foreign company under Section 562, and it will act independently and engage in legitimate profit-making exercises. It would be seen as a foreign company coming in Malaysia, and it would be able to deal as normal, but it is not viewed as a separate legal entity from the foreign parent company. So any debt, obligations, whatever you would have a cause of action against the foreign company would be against the parent company in the country of origin. So the requirements for establishing a branch office, it must use the same name as its parent company. This is provided under Section 564 of the Companies Act. So a foreign company shall be registered under the name as registered in its place of origin. It must perform the same business activities as its parent organizations, and that is why any management decisions undertaken by the branch office must be approved by the parent company because it is seen as the same entity. And a requirement that a branch office has to comply with is that it must appoint a branch agent in Malaysia. So this branch agent will be answerable for all such acts, matters, and things that are required to be done by the foreign company. And there's also personal liability if it was something that the agent was responsible for and was in breach of. So the procedure for registering a branch office, as a general overview, starts with conducting a name search. So this is the same step that is required to register any company, even a local company. So for a foreign company, it would be to check that it's the same name as the parent company, but it's also subject to the same requirements of any business wanting to be established in Malaysia, which it has to be an acceptable name. It cannot be identical to anything that's already existing or anything identical which has been reserved, the name has been reserved, or anything specifically prohibited by the minister to not be included in a company's name. For example, you cannot have anything that's relating to royal, like you cannot denote anything that's related to royals or any government body because that's a name specifically prohibited. So once you conduct the name search, you would then proceed to submit registration documents. We'll go into the specific details in a bit, but once you have all the registration requirements and the registrar is satisfied, then you would proceed to make payment of the registration fees. And once all of that is done, then you can finally have your certificate of registration. So the registrar will issue the company its own number, and then it will be a certificate of registration for the branch office. So registration of a branch office is provided under Section 562 of the Companies Act. So in it, it's very specific in the details that it requires, and I've just simplified it here in this slide. You would need particulars of every shareholder in Malaysia, particulars of every person who is appointed as a director, and a list of its shareholders or members of the foreign company. So particulars would include name, the identification, the place of origin, and the nationality. And on top of that, depending on whether it's the foreign parent company in the country of origin, is based on share capital or it is limited without share capital, then you would need the details of number of shares or the amount which the member undertakes to contribute accordingly, depending on which type of company was established in the main origin country. So the registration documents include a statement of the agent who has been appointed at the branch office, and this statement would include his confirmation of his consent for the appointment. This is stated out in the Companies Act. The Companies Commission of Malaysia has also included certain guidelines and have listed out some documents which they usually require for these kind of registrations. So you would need a certified copy of Certificate of Incorporation of the foreign parent company, memorandum and articles of association. Basically, all of the documents, the basic documents for the parent company, they would want to have a copy. And in terms of all the steps that you've taken before this, for example, for checking the name, so the application on the reservation of the availability of the name or the approval of the company name and all such other information and documents which may be required by the registrar of the companies. So this is usually where the lawyers come in and make sure that you have everything in order, and we let you know whether you're missing documents or the documents may not be clear. So if, for example, the foreign parent company is from a country that doesn't have English documents, for example, you would need us to check the translation's okay and to make sure that you have the right person translating your documents. So these are the kind of things that you would engage the lawyers in to double check for you during the registration process. So if you have everything in order and all the documents are ordered, then you would proceed to the payment. So the registration fees are dependent on the nominal authorized share capital, and it would follow the RM equivalent of that capital in Malaysia. So this is depending on what type of your company, it's quite straightforward. And yeah, so the more you have, the more the fees will be. And I think that's it. And I'll pass it on to Mira.
Hi, thank you, Anis. Wait, let me just share my screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Mira, and I'm a legal associate in the corporate department too. So Anis has kindly explained the first part of the talk, and I will be continuing on with the second part of the talk. So before I start with my points, maybe I can give a brief recap of what Anis has already explained. So Anis has explained what is the definition of foreign companies under the Companies Act 2016. And then Anis has also given an overview of 3 entities. So for foreign companies that intend to establish a local presence in Malaysia, there are 3 types of entity that they can consider. So these 3 types of entities will depend, which one that they will choose will definitely depend on the factors that Anis has provided just now. It can include the nature of business, how the shareholders are. Anis has discussed extensively the first option, which is a branch office. And I'll be continuing with the 2 other options. So the second option is to establish a representative or a regional office. Okay, so for those that intend to establish a representative office or a regional office, it's usually seen as a preliminary phase for companies that are committed to set up the regional operations in the country. Now, usually we would hear representative office, regional office, and these 2 terms are sometimes used interchangeably, but they do have different meanings. So first of all, we have a representative office. A representative office is defined as an office of a foreign company or an organization that is established to collect relevant information on investment opportunities. So this is commonly seen especially in the manufacturing sector. It can also be used to enhance bilateral trade relations. It can also be used for research and development, to source for materials. So this can be done under the representative office. On the other hand, we also have a regional office. So this office serves as a coordination center for the company or the organization's affiliates, subsidiaries, and agents in the Asia-Pacific region. So this office is responsible for the designated activities of the company within the region that it operates. Now, what makes it different from the other 2 entities is that for a representative office, it is not required to be incorporated under the Companies Act 2016, but instead what it is required is to obtain approval from the government of Malaysia. Okay, so if let's say the applicant is interested to apply to establish this type of entity, the application will have to be submitted to the relevant government agency. So which government agency that they will have to submit will actually depend on the nature of business that the company intends to venture in Malaysia. So generally, any and all types of sectors besides banking and financial services or tourism, the application will have to be submitted to the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, or more commonly known as MIDA. If they are intending to go into the financial and banking services, they will have to submit the application to the Central Bank of Malaysia or Bank Negara. If let's say they are intending to go into the tourism, then they will have to submit the application to the Ministry of Tourism of Malaysia. Let's move on. Okay. So since a representative office or regional office is seen as a preliminary office or transnational structure, so the activities that can be conducted under this office is actually restricted. Generally, the activities that are not allowed to be conducted are of those that result in a commercial transaction. So we have listed out, as you can see on the slide here, the activities that can be conducted under this office. So this includes planning or coordinating of business activities, gathering and analyzing information or undertaking studies pertaining to investment and business opportunities in Malaysia or the surrounding region. You can use it to identify sources of raw materials, components, or other industrial products, research and product development. You can also use it as a coordination center for its affiliates, subsidiaries, and agents in the regions. And any and all other activities which does not actually result in actual commercial transactions. Before, it was activities that were permitted to be conducted under this entity. Now, these are the activities that are not permitted. So basically, engaging in any trading, business, or any form of commercial activities is not permitted, which includes importing and exporting. You are not permitted to lease warehousing facilities, sign any business contracts on behalf of the foreign corporation, or provide any services for a fee, or you are not allowed to participate in the daily management of any of your subsidiaries, affiliates, or branches in Malaysia. Now, in order for you to be able to establish a representative or a regional office in Malaysia, you must fulfill the eligibility criteria. So the expected operational expenditure of this office must be at least 300,000 ringgit per annum. Now, don't worry, this is not set in stone. Upon your application to the relevant government body, they will review your proposal and they will see whether this amount should be increased or lowered according to the activities that you intend to conduct in Malaysia. Now, because this office is not permitted to conduct any commercial transaction, this expected expenditure, the sources of the funds must be from outside of Malaysia. Okay, so moving on for the duration of this office. So for company, the initial period that will be granted, if let's say your application is approved, it will be for an initial period of 2 years. And let's say if you have already finished these 2 years and you would like to apply for any extension, the relevant government body will definitely decide on the merit of each case. But any extension will be only for a maximum of another 3 years. On the other hand, for a government and a trade association, the duration will be based on the contractual agreement that they have, or for a maximum of 5 years. So as you can see, the initial period will be for 2 years, and the maximum for this type of entity is only for 5 years. So let's say after this 5 years has lapsed and the company still intends to operate in Malaysia, they will have to decide whether they intend to register a branch office or incorporate a local subsidiary. So for this company, they are allowed to apply for an expatriate post, who would only be considered for managerial and technical posts. So managerial are for those that are intending to come and implement the office policies in Malaysia. So they do require to have the relevant experience, post qualifications, and support from the original company. Whereas the technical posts, we mean posts that require a certain technical set of skills. So this also require a certain set of post qualifications and experience. So the number of posts that will be granted for each company will actually depend on the function and activities of the representative office. So this will all be in the discretion of the relevant government body. Now, for anyone that the company intends to appoint as an expatriate in the Malaysia, they must already be an employee in the company, either in its subsidiary or in its group. So once the application has been approved, an employment pass will be valid for 1 year. And after this 1 year, it is required to be renewed annually. Okay. So for this type of office, we have listed out the required documents. Now, I just want to let everyone know that this is not an exhaustive list. The relevant government body might require more information. So this is generally what is required. So we have a duly completed application form. We have the foreign parent company's certificate of incorporation, a copy of their business profile, the latest annual report and audited accounts of 2 years. So bear in mind, just like Anis mentioned just now, so if let's say these documents are not in Malay or in English, it will have to be translated before it can be submitted in support of your application. Okay, besides that, you will also have to provide a copy of the expatriate passport, certificates, resume, past employment testimonials, and letters of appointment to show why you would like to appoint this particular person. You will also have to give a copy of the applicant's tenancy agreement for where you intend to operate your business in Malaysia, and also a document setting out the detailed description of the duties to be performed by the applicant and the activities or the products of the foreign parent company. So this is basically the general that is required. There may be more that may be requested by the relevant government agency. Okay, so just now you have already finished discussing in relation to a representative office. Now we will go on to the final entity, which is an incorporation of a local subsidiary. So a local subsidiary company can be incorporated in the form of a private limited company by shares. So in Malaysia, this is more commonly known as a Sdn Bhd. As we know, a Sdn Bhd, one of the advantages of a Sdn Bhd is that it is a separate legal entity. So this differs from a branch office and a representative office in the sense that for a Sdn Bhd, any debts and liabilities that is incurred under this company will be liable by the Sdn Bhd itself, and the foreign company will not be liable for it. And because it is a separate legal entity, it means that it can conduct any and all types of business which may be different from the foreign parent company. Okay, so as it is a private limited company by shares, so the shares can be owned by local or foreign shareholders. It can be owned by local and foreign, or it can be fully owned by foreign shareholders. However, for those companies that have 100% foreign shareholders, I just want you to take note that there are regulations in certain industries that require a minimum local or Bumiputra equity, or sometimes the Bumiputra must hold majority shares. So these include sectors such as oil and gas, telecommunications, water and electricity industries. So these are some examples of the sectors which will require local or Bumiputra equity. So for every industry, there are specific sector regulations issued by the relevant governmental departments. So the foreign company have to take note of this before they intend to incorporate a local subsidiary or apply for licenses. Now let's move on to the minimum requirements for a Sdn Bhd. So first of all, there is a requirement for one shareholder. So for shareholders in a Sdn Bhd, the minimum number is 1, whereas the maximum number of shareholders that is permitted is 50 shareholders. And there is also a requirement of 1 director. So this director can be either a local director, it can also be a foreign director. However, the foreign director requires a principal place of residence in Malaysia. The other requirement for a Sdn Bhd is that there must be a local company secretary that is appointed. This company secretary must be registered with the Companies Commission of Malaysia, SSM, and possess a valid practicing certificate issued by M. After the application has been approved, the company has 30 days to appoint a local company secretary. Okay, so now we move on to the procedures to incorporate a Sdn Bhd. It is quite similar to what Anis has explained earlier on, in the sense that first of all, before the application can be submitted, you will have to conduct a name search. This name search has to be conducted with the Companies Commission of Malaysia to determine the availability of the proposed company name. So just to ensure that there's nobody that have the similar company name, or whether you are using words that are not permitted. But let's say once the name search has been approved, the applicant must submit their application within 30 days to the Companies Commission of Malaysia. So this is in line with Section 14, subsection 1 of the Companies Act 2016, which requires a person who desires to form a company shall apply for incorporation to the registrar. So as similar to the application for a representative office, so for incorporation of a local subsidiary, it must be supported by the following particulars. So this includes the approved name of the proposed company, which has been submitted earlier on, the private limited status of the proposed company, what is the nature of business, the proposed address of the registered office where you will conduct your business, the particulars of every shareholder of the proposed company. And let's say this person is a body corporate, you will also have to submit the particulars of the body corporate, the particulars of every person who intends to be the director, the details of class and number of shares that is to be taken by each shareholder. You also have to submit a statement from each director. So let's say there's only one director, so you have to submit a statement from that particular director to confirm his consent to be appointed as a director of the proposed company, and that he is not disqualified under the Companies Act 2016 to be appointed as a director. And finally, any and all other information or documents that the Registrar of Companies may require. So these are basically the particulars that will have to be submitted with your application before the Companies Commission of Malaysia can approve your application. Okay, so now we have reached the final stage, which is the overview. So we have set out these 3 types of entities and also the pros and cons for people to consider, for the audience to consider. So for a branch office, as Anis explained just now, it is basically an extension of the foreign parent company in the country. So because this is an extension, so an advantage is that the foreign parent company can exercise a greater level of control over the local office. So you can oversee all the management of the local office in Malaysia. However, because it is an extension of the foreign parent company, it also means that it will be liable for any debts and liabilities. So it is not a separate legal entity. Okay, moving on to a representative office. A representative office might be considered instead of the other 2 options, as it is easier to comply with the local authorities as it is less compliance heavy compared to the other 2 entities. It is not required to file any annual financial statements as the other 2. However, for a representative office, the activities that can be conducted under these entities is restricted. As I mentioned just now, so basically, there are no commercial transactions allowed to be conducted under this office. You are only allowed to conduct activities such as research, studies, to source for materials, and all that. Finally, for a local subsidiary company, as it is a separate legal entity, the debts and liabilities are separated from the foreign company, and because of this, they can also conduct all business activities that may differ from the foreign parent company. Now, I put an asterisk at the top because just to take note that there's some business activities that do require local shareholders, as mentioned just now. On the other hand, for the cons of incorporating a local subsidiary company is the fact that it is very compliance heavy. You must prepare and lodge a set of accounts with CCM annually, and you must have your financial statements audited annually as well. So these are the pros and cons that can be considered by foreign parent company before you can decide on what type of entity that you wish to establish in Malaysia to have a local presence in Malaysia. Now, the key takeaways from this, as mentioned, is that the type of entity the foreign parent company wants to establish must take into consideration various factors, such as the nature of business and the type of industry it intends to venture in Malaysia. And because each sector has its different relevant governmental agency, it will have to take note of this, and it will have to comply with the procedures, requirements, and prohibitions for each entity. Okay, so I guess that's all for me. So I will pass it back to Jaslyn for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Mira and Anis, for your insight. We'll now move on to the Q&A session. So if you have not your questions yet, please do so. The first question we have is, how would the contracting be like for all 3 of the foreign companies with external third parties in situations such as tenancy agreements with landlord? Would it be signed between branch, representative, or regional officers, or by the parent? I think for this question, Anis, would you like to answer?
Thanks, Jaslyn, and thanks for the question. So to answer this, it goes into whether the entity is a separate entity or it's an extension of the parent company. So the representative office or the regional office cannot enter into contracts on behalf of the foreign parent company, as they are not trading entities and cannot carry on any actual commercial transactions. So it is strictly an office for research and development, as Mira explained, and therefore the parent company would need to enter into the tenancy agreement, and it must be duly registered with the Companies Commission of Malaysia. For a branch office, take note that it is only established by the foreign parent company on a short-term basis, and it is not a separate legal entity. Hence, the agreements would be entered between the local company and the foreign parent company. For the local subsidiaries, it would be in the form of Sdn Berhad. It will be as companies in Malaysia enter into agreement. So it will be another local company and another local company. So it will be the local Malaysian company and the foreign local subsidiary company. In terms of the clauses, it's very case-to-case basis. Yeah, so depending on what the breach is and whatever liabilities parties agree with one another who's to bear, that would depend. So it's there's no general catch-all clause to cover everything. So yeah, it's a case basis. I hope that's answered that question.
Thank you, Anis. We have a second question posted in the chat box. The question is it permissible if a parent company is providing a wellness service but want to open a representative or regional office but will mainly be doing an IT supporting job for the parent company. Mira, would you like to take this one?
Thanks, Jessie. So let me just reiterate the question. If the parent company is providing wellness services, but they want to open a representative regional office, but would mainly doing IT supporting job for the parent company, is that permitted? Yes, that is permitted. However, bearing in mind, no trading or commercial transactions can be conducted by the said office, the representative or the regional office. It is strictly an office for research and development, business promotions, and license activities. So there are no trading or commercial transactions that are permitted to be conducted under this said entity. I hope that answers your questions.
Thanks, Mira. I think for now, actually, we don't have any more questions. I think that concludes the question portion of this talk. Before I let you guys go, we do have a couple of announcements to make. We have our upcoming talk on the 8th of February on understanding real property gains tax that will be given by one of our senior associates, Marilyn Tay. To sign up, just simply click on the link, key in the link in your browser shown on screen now, or you can also scan the QR code to sign up. I'll give it probably just a few seconds for you guys to scan if you like. Please also feel free to follow our social media to keep up to date on any of our future talks or events. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We also offer 30-minute free consultations. So if you would like to speak to one of our lawyers, you can schedule a meeting on the website or again, scan the QR code. I believe the link will also be posted in the chat box. The 30-minute consultation can be done over the phone or via video conference. That is all from our end. Thank you to all our guests for joining us on our first talk of the year. We hope you found today's session very informative, and we hope to see you on our next talk in February. Thank you.